I want to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. I know all of you are busy. I'm Bob Lee. I'm the co-editor of the People's Tribune newspaper, and Laura Garcia, who is the co-editor of our sister bilingual publication, El Tribuno del Pueblo, is also here, and I'll introduce the rest of the group in just a moment. Before we get started, I wanted to just mention a couple of logistical details. One is that we are going to record the discussion and we'll post it online later. And most of the conversation will be in English, but there is translation available from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. If you want to hear the translation, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and choose the channel for the language you want to hear at that moment. You'll hear the translator's voice along with the original speaker's voice at a lower volume, unless you choose to mute the original speaker and just hear the translator. And toward the end of the webinar, we'll have some time for questions. So if you could please put your questions in the chat at that point, we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. And if you want to share links or comments in the chat about examples of resistance or other events happening where you live, please feel free to do so. The People's Tribune and El Tribuno del Pueblo are part of the Zooming to the Border Coalition, which is an informal group of independent journalists, activists, artists, and researchers that came together out of some meetings we had back in 2019 and 2020. The coalition in 2020 sponsored a series of 5 webinars, which we called Zooming to the Border, where we brought together panels of people who were active along the southern border around immigration issues and other issues of concern to the border communities. And we looked on this as a kind of people-to-people fact-finding mission regarding violations of human rights along the border. We compiled the information gathered from those discussions into a 64-page report, which we submitted to various public officials. And we also posted the report on the websites of the People's Tribune and Tribuno. You can also find recordings of those webinars on our websites and YouTube channels, and I'll drop links to those in the chat. And of course, we're not the first, and we're not the only ones to be doing this sort of thing. We're just hoping that by giving people a platform to speak, we add some small contribution to what millions of other people have been doing for many years. I decided to start again doing what may become a series of webinars about immigration issues in light of the wholesale assault on the human and constitutional rights of immigrants, and indeed on everyone's rights, that has escalated tremendously since Trump took office in January. And with this webinar today, we're aiming to allow a few of the many activists who are out there fighting to share information about their efforts in helping to build resistance to these illegal and immoral attacks on human rights and to the dictatorship that is being imposed on this country. So now I'd like to introduce our moderator and the panelists and give you a little information on them, and then I'll turn it over to the moderator. Our moderator is Pedro Rios. He's director of the American Friends Service Committee's U.S.-Mexico Border Program, and he's worked for AFSC since 2003. He oversees a program that documents abuses by law enforcement agencies, collaborates with community groups, advocates for policy change, and works with migrant communities to build collective leadership locally and throughout the border region. Pedro has a master's degree in ethnic studies from San Francisco State University. Pedro is also a photographer and a writer. And our panelists include Camilo Perez Bustillo, who's the former executive director of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. He's a member of the leadership team of Witness at the Border. He's a fellow at the Institute for the Geography of Peace in Juarez, Mexico, El Paso, Texas, and at the University of Bergen, Norway's Global Research Program on Inequality. He's co-chair of the National Lawyer Guild's Task Force on the Americas, a professor of law and ethnic studies at St. Mary's College of California, a visiting chair professor of human rights at National Taiwan University's College of Law, and co-founder of the International Tribunal of Conscience of Peoples in Movement. Rufina Reyes is director of La Resistencia, a grassroots group supporting people in detention at the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, Washington. Rufina has been a member of La Resistencia for 5 years. Rufina has been fighting against the detentions and deportations. She has also fought for the closure of the Northwest Detention Center and the release of all detainees. Rufina is a Mexican migrant, mother of 2, and has a great husband who is in the struggle for human rights. Cristina Gutierrez is a champion for social and environmental justice. She joined the Californians for Pesticide Reform team in June 2024. Born to immigrant parents in Los Angeles, she found her calling advocating for underserved communities in Fresno and the Central Valley at an early age. With a deep appreciation for her roots and the challenges she's overcome, Cristina has a wealth of experience, having worked with groups like UNIR, CNC, SEIU, and Mi Familia Vota. Fernanda Zuzul is with Unión del Barrio. Unión del Barrio has carried out community patrols in Southern California since the 1990s to alert the immigrant community about ICE presence in the neighborhood. Zuzul said recently, Unión del Barrio has increased its community patrols since the ICE directly attacked the migrant, immigrant, and working community. Our job is to defend our people. And with that, Pedro, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I just want to be sure, I think we might be missing one of our panelists, Cristina. And so maybe in the interim, we might be able to, someone might be able to reach out to her and maybe send a link to her so that she can join. So I'd like to begin by first expressing my appreciation to Tribuno del Pueblo and the People's Tribune for bringing us together on this issue, on this session titled Zooming to the Resistance Against Mass Deportations. And thank you, Bob, for the introductions, and Laura for your forthcoming closing statements during this session. And I'd also like to express my special appreciation to Nancy and to Gloria for all the behind-the-scenes work that they've done to making this convening possible. And also, of course, to our wonderful and skilled translators and interpreters, Sandra and Ladna, for joining us in this session. And finally, I'd like to thank our panelists for taking time from your busy schedules to share the important information about how you and your collectives that you represent are organizing and resisting the threats that our communities are facing. Through Know Your Rights workshops, legal challenges to government measures that weaken our constitutional rights, from community patrols that assert our power as organized collectives, to rapid response teams throughout the country, and from documentation of human and civil rights violations and the power of witnessing as a power to dissuade abuses. All of these are ways that our communities resist the affront that our communities are facing, some of which you will hear about tonight. The threats related to immigration enforcement have affected our communities for many years, if not decades. And under this administration, however, they have substantially become more aggressive, seriously compromising the integrity of our families and using cruelty as a methodology for detaining our loved ones. And so I'd like to proceed now with posing some questions to our panelists, and following the questions, we'll have an opportunity to answer questions from the audience, and then we'll have closing statements that Laura will offer. So I'll begin with Camilo. This is, Camilo, more of a contextual question, if you don't mind. So I'll package these two questions together and see how you respond, hopefully. So how would you describe this political moment, considering the title of this webinar? What is the significance of resisting mass deportations and immigration enforcement that targets working families?
You know, I want to begin first by echoing the words of appreciation that you expressed, Pedro. And also for you, because I've learned a tremendous amount from you, Pedro. You know, we worked together a long time ago. This will age both of us at the American Friends Service Committee back in 2003. So anything that I can share is based on that learning and my respect for those who are on the panel. And also that the place from which I speak is also as the child of migrants from Colombia and as the parent of migrants who were raised in Mexico. You know, we're a mixed status family on both sides of the border. And with all that, I guess what I would try to speak to when we talk about the context is that there are dimensions of what we're experiencing, all of us, that we have seen before, especially those of us who try to study the history of how we got here. There are many familiar patterns. There are recurrent aspects in terms of the policies and the practices that are being inflicted in our communities. Of course, in the first Trump administration and what's happening now, but also all the ways that there's been continuity bipartisan for the last 30 years. Everything that these policies of deterrence since the 1990s. But it's really 100 years that we've been experiencing, you know, in our communities of this kind of terror taking different forms. But I think if we step back, even though, again, we have a lot to build on in terms of that historical reflection and the fact that mass detention is not new and mass deportation is not new, and the militarization of our communities and the criminalization and targeting of our communities is not new. It's the way in which all of that has been put together and the rhetoric that's been coming from the White House and the form it's taken. You know, just in the last couple of days, the El Paso massacre has been back in the news, the sentencing of the gunman. And that was a massacre that was produced directly by the rhetoric at the White House. I was working in El Paso at the time at Hope Border Institute. El Paso was the place where family separation was first tested. So for any of us that have worked at the border, none of this is theoretical. None of this is speculative. So I would say, you know, when like my colleagues who are lawyers, and I'm a lawyer too and a law professor, when they talk about, you know, have we gotten yet to the point where there's a constitutional crisis? And, you know, one of the criteria is where court orders are being defied. And then the issue comes up about our brothers who've been sent on those flights to El Salvador, you know, mostly of Venezuelan origin, but also Salvadoreños like nuestro hermano Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And that's important. And, you know, what's going to develop in terms of possible contempt, you know, orders, citations against Trump administration officials, all that will play out in the next couple of weeks. And we've had 3 different Supreme Court opinions, brief and cryptic and incomplete, and we might have more. And we'll know soon more about the legality of the Alien Enemies Act and all that. But I think really that's missing the point, because the reality is not only do we have a constitutional crisis, we have a human rights crisis. And our communities are expert in that. You know, I would say finally, we have essentially a Latin American style dictator in the White House. We know a lot about that. Desde América Latina, conocemos bien esa realidad. You know, we're experts on the experiences of forced disappearances, which is what it is when you have our brothers put on those flights on March 15th, on those 3 flights that ended up at Secot. Those are forced disappearances taken to conditions that have been widely documented as conditions of torture. And these are crimes under international law. These are crimes that are recognized as crimes against humanity. And so that's what we're dealing with. And this, in Spanish, we say contubernio, there's this complicity, that image that we saw of Bukele and Trump in the Oval Office, that's a criminal conspiracy in public to commit serious human rights crimes. Over 300 brothers of ours in those conditions in El Salvador, and then similar conditions in those improvised detention centers, not just in Guantanamo, but also in the Darien and in Costa Rica and elsewhere in Panama, and on and on. You know, it's the, they used to talk about the Gulag archipelago, now it's the Trump archipelago. So I think we have to rise to that. We're talking about a human rights crisis, and we're talking about Trump assuming the dimensions of an authoritarian dictatorship. And we have a lot to learn from the experiences de nuestros pueblos in America Latina and how we have struggled against those conditions. But we have to name things, you know, with that knowledge, with that expertise, and push back in the same terms.
Great. Thank you, Camilo. And thank you for mentioning the massacre in El Paso. When that incident occurred, and so we talk about state violence and violence by non-state actors, and the collusion between them. And in this case, this man who decided to go in and really pushed and emboldened by the racist rhetoric that was coming out of the White House at that time to commit a massacre, an atrocity in the most violent way, reminded me of the massacre that occurred in 1984 in San Isidro, just a short distance where I grew up. And it occurred at a McDonald's where this man who, his name was James Huberty, woke up that day and he said he was going to hunt Mexicans. And he killed 21 people that day. The same rhetoric that he used in 1984 was repeated again when this man in El Paso decided to commit a massacre. And that's the violence that we see from non-state actors. But we also see violence that is taking place from the state. In the case of ICE raids, which have been occurring throughout San Diego County, as is the case throughout the country. ICE and Border Patrol use fear to threaten and control communities. It is a demonstration of state power. It's an insertion of saying we have the power to enforce this fear upon you. And this question then is for you, Fernanda. How has Unión del Barrio's community patrols helped defend community members under threat of that immediate immigration enforcement action? And can you describe how they work and why they counter the false narrative that the power only lies with the state, that they demonstrate community-based collective power?
Yes. Hola, buenas tardes. Good evening, everybody. My name is Fernanda. Soy militante de Unión del Barrio. We are a political organization based out of San Diego. We also have a comité regional in Los Ángeles as well. A lot of the work that we have done going into this administration has been the community patrols. I want to thank everybody for joining us, both panelists, hosts, and all of the attendees. Camilo and Pedro, thank you for providing the historical and political context. I think that's a great way to start and kind of set the tone for the conversation, right? When we talk about the state power, it's really about the state terror, right? The constant attacks. This is not, Camilo, you said it best, right? This is not new to us. But the way that the administration is working now is a different beast, right? And we've seen it on the daily on the streets here in San Diego. The community patrols are a way to counterwork the mass deportations, the ICE presence in our communities. So we have developed a mechanism that counteracts the patrols and the presence of ICE in our neighborhoods. The community patrols is part of our self-defense mechanism. So what we do is we organize our communities and we patrol our neighborhoods. So just the same way that ICE comes out and patrols our neighborhoods, we do the same. We do patrols early in the morning. Originally, we were doing 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is the times that they were working in the past. Now with this administration, with the additional resources, we see them working around the clock, Monday through Sunday, 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. sometimes. So the capacity at which they are attacking our communities is massive. A lot of their work functions out of the secrecy that Pedro was talking about, the secrecy, the intimidation. They work in a way that that scares our community. They show up into our neighborhoods with unmarked vehicles. They're in our streets with civilian plain clothing. There's no way for us to identify them in terms of what agency they work for or what their duty is when they're in our neighborhood. But over the years, we collected the patterns, the characteristics of how they function, and then we created the science behind it to respond. We have a lot of successes with our work, but it really comes out of the organization of our community. It lies in being informed, right? We've done a lot of Know Your Rights. A lot of organizations here locally have done a lot of Know Your Rights, but Know Your Rights workshops. But right now, in terms of the emboldened, not just the agents, but just the public, we really transition into this function of defending our rights, because we know that ICE is going to lie. They're going to try to intimidate us. They're going to use and abuse our power. So we've really kind of switched gears in terms of our trainings, in terms of our presentations, to really lay out the difference under this administration. We have a whole YouTube channel that has all of our videos. We document a lot of our encounters. I will share that in the chat, so you all could go in there and kind of see what it looks like, what the community patrols look like. Because again, when we talk about the power lies within the state, well, the community patrols really show you an alternative narrative. So if you could play that video that I shared with you all, it is 1.5 minutes. This was the shortest video, but I love sharing this, and I'll kind of provide some context to the video. But we have one of our a sister of one of our comrades who hadn't taken a training, hadn't been involved in the organized community patrols. She was going to her local like liquor store market down the street. She encounters a nice vehicle, and using the same mechanisms that we do in the patrols, she encounters the ICE agent, starts recording, starts documenting his presence, and then starts recording and pretty much kicks him out of their neighborhood. So let me see if we could share that.
Yeah, you want me to share my screen and play?
Yes, and if you could just play that video, and let me just close my door because my gardener is outside. Give me a second.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. We got Migra here. What are you guys doing here, huh? Waiting. You guys waiting for who? Our job, ma'am. You're doing your job. You guys are harassing our community. Okay. Okay. Let me see. What kind of car is this? Here in Poway. In this car. Otra aquí. Here in Poway, they're trying to use normal cars. Those are the plates. There goes that Dodge over there. Here we go. Keep going, sir.
And that's it. Right. So there is ICE presence. Although this wasn't part of an organized community patrol, this is somebody within our community, within our organized network that knows the science of the patrols. So step one is verifying, right? So verifying, is it an ICE agent? Like you saw, it's just a regular vehicle. It's unmarked. The agent inside is wearing a vest and you're able to identify once you kind of get closer. But part of the community patrol is verifying, confirming that it is ICE in the neighborhood, denouncing and exposing their presence. Like I said, their success comes from the secrecy of their operation. So the moment that you are able to denounce them and alert the community that they're there, then you are able to defend the community, right? And then rejecting their work, right? Saying like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're not welcome, right? So I love this video because again, you hear her tone, her attitude, the rebellious voice of the youth just denouncing their presence, right? So this is really at its core, this is the essence of the community patrols, being able to verify, being able to push back, resisting, right? Rejecting their presence in our neighborhoods. The militarization that Camilo is talking about is really this, right? Like the normalization of having agents in and out of our communities is not okay, right? So the counter work is being able to expose them, even being able to denounce them, reject their presence, and do it in a way that's organized, and defending our rights, and liberties, right? Because we know that they're not patrolling and in the rich neighborhoods. We know that their presence is in the working class community. So it's really about empowering our community to be organized, to be alert, to defend one another, and to reject their presence. I do apologize, I didn't time my answer, but I'm gonna leave it there to make sure that we have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. That's fine. I think we have a leeway in how we design the presentations. And thank you so much. I wanted to say that Unión del Barrio has been doing these community patrols since the early 90s.
Yes.
And so it's not something new. It's something that's been going on for quite some time. And in addition to that, just being present in the community, this photo that's behind me is
Yes.
from an action that was called for yesterday when Customs and Border Protection was going to have a hiring career fest in the barrio at a library. And when Unión del Barrio community members found out, they organized an action, and CBP, Customs and Border Protection, canceled their appearance. And so it's about being present for the community, and it's about insisting that we have a right to have rights. And that statement comes from way back, and I know Camilo remembers that statement from a document that we wrote back in 2005, I think it was. And the right to have rights, just a very basic principle that we should be tuned into. So thank you, Fernanda, for your work.
Yes.
I want to now switch to Spanish. Voy a cambiar al español, así para darle la oportunidad a Rufina que también nos comparta un poco sobre la experiencia que la organización La Resistencia ha tenido en cuanto al tema de las detenciones. Sabemos de que hay más atención sobre la posibilidad de que esta administración está buscando un incremento de fondos a su presupuesto, un incremento tremendo que podría llevar a muchas más personas a ser detenidas en los Estados Unidos, en bases militares, y como hemos visto, a mandar a personas a prisiones de tortura en otros países. Rufina, ¿qué estrategias está usando la resistencia para prepararse para contrarrestar la posibilidad de estas detenciones o el incremento de estas detenciones? ¿Y qué significa para las personas detenidas que hay personas como usted que están luchando para asegurar la libertad?
Sí, muchas gracias por la invitación. Pues realmente la resistencia, ¿verdad? No es nuevo para la resistencia todo esto que está pasando. Em, Como sabemos, la resistencia lleva 11 luchando contra todas estas detenciones y deportaciones. Sabemos realmente, como dicen los compañeros, que no es algo nuevo, ¿verdad? Es algo que ya ha estado pasando. Em, Simplemente hay algunos gobiernos, ¿verdad? Algunas administraciones, cuando ellos lo están haciendo abiertamente, en este caso, ¿verdad? La administración Trump, que no está escondiendo para nada todas sus acciones, que él está implementando y tratando de aterrorizar, ¿verdad? Y tener miedo, infundir miedo a la comunidad. Realmente todas las administraciones, ¿verdad?, han hecho muchas deportaciones y detenciones. Solamente esta administración sabemos que tiene todo el apoyo em, dentro de su administración, ¿no? La Casa Blanca, ¿no? Como todos son de su mismo. Lo siento, es que la interpretación está un poco mal. Estoy escuchando el inglés, no sé por qué, pero ok, voy a tratar de. Simplemente es continuar. Nosotros estamos siempre en continuo trabajo, tratando de terminar todo tipo de detención, ¿verdad? Em, este caso, en este tiempo, ¿verdad? La administración Trump, sabemos que fue su campaña la que él promovió el deportar a muchas personas. Entonces, él está tratando de hacer creer eso a sus simpatizantes, del poder decir que sí está haciendo lo que él prometió. Sabemos que realmente no está pasando exactamente como él está haciéndonoslo creer. También a través de los medios sociales, ¿verdad? Están infundiendo mucho temor, eh, muchas veces dando información errónea y que realmente no está pasando. Sabemos que muchas de las personas sí están siendo afectadas, pero es porque ya tenían un proceso migratorio o muchos de ellos están bajo detención digital, que es un brazalete en el pie a través de una aplicación en el celular, de un reloj que los está monitoreando. Em, la administración Biden fue quien prácticamente creemos que preparó todo esto para que fuera más fácil estas detenciones, ¿verdad? Ya sabemos que si tienen localizada a todas estas personas es porque otra vez ya están bajo ese proceso. Simplemente está tratando de hacernos creer que está logrando todas sus promesas, em, pero en realidad creemos que solamente está infundiendo miedo para paralizarnos. Entonces creo que es muy importante saber que no debemos de confiar muchas veces o siempre en las gobernaturas, ¿no? Que sabemos que un presidente es más mejor que el otro. Creo que ningún presidente es mejor. Todo esto también es muy importante que nos organicemos, ¿verdad? Y que el tener a una organización quien te asesore, quien te ayude a saber cómo defenderte en estos casos de arrestos, no quiere decir que va a evitar que nos deporten, pero es una probabilidad un poco menos que pueda ser detenido. Entonces, creo que es muy importante que si mm, el trabajo de toda organización, ¿no? Y que si estás, tal vez no estás integrado a alguna, es hora de integrarte, ¿no? Y que debemos de estar unidos en este momento. Entonces, creo que en el pasado yo no sabía, siempre creemos y decimos que el presidente nos trata bien y que posiblemente nos quiere dar algo mejor, pero realmente esta administración pasada de Biden, ¿verdad? Fue un total engaño, porque muchas de las personas no sabían que tener un brazalete o estar monitoreado, estar reportándote bajo una aplicación en un celular era detención. Entonces, ahora estamos tratando de hacerles saber que eran un tipo de arresto domiciliario y que es algo igual que estar detenido en un centro de detención, que en estos momentos son terribles, ¿no? Como lo está haciendo el centro de detención en el estado de Washington. Es algo muy traumatizante que no tan solo afecta a tu familia, sino a la persona que también está viviéndolo, ¿no? Es algo que encierra eh, y alcanza mucho, ¿no? Tanto psicológicamente, mentalmente, en todos los aspectos te afecta y te daña.
Muchas gracias, Rufina. Aprecio mucho sus comentarios, especialmente tomando en cuenta que el terror del Estado, el terror se aparece de muchas formas y cuánto más difícil es cuando una persona está encerrada, cuando una persona no tiene la posibilidad de salir de ese encierro por cuestiones que realmente no hacen sentido y que este gobierno, esta administración está buscando cómo ampliar su poder de detener a personas sin importar la Constitución. Le agradezco mucho sus comentarios. Voy a tomar una pausa nomás para asegurar de que esté funcionando la traducción. So I'm just taking a pause just to make sure that the translation is working correctly. Maybe let's see if you need translation into English. Well, first I should point out that there's an interpretation globe at the bottom. So you, at that point, would select the language that you would want to listen into. Hay un globo abajo de la página o de la pantalla donde uno puede seleccionar el idioma de preferencia. Entonces, nomás para asegurar de que todos puedan eh, eh, ah, seleccionar el idioma de preferencia. Entonces, bueno, continuamos entonces. Ok, a ver. Continuamos entonces con Cristina. So we'll continue with Cristina. Welcome, Cristina. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to take us back to January, where we saw that even before Trump had entered the White House, that the Border Patrol out of El Centro sector led a series of indiscriminate raids throughout Kern County. They used illegal tactics for which now they're being sued to detain primarily workers. There was a quick response by the local rapid response members to denounce the Border Patrol's actions, but also to try to support the community members who were affected. And I'm wondering, Cristina, if you can tell us, if you can describe to us how the rapid response network that you're a part of operates, and when activated, how does the rapid response team do, what do they do when there's an active raid taking place, and what steps does the team there take to support members of your community who are under threat of an immigration raid?
Thank you for this space. It's in English. You want the
However you want. If you want in English or you want Spanish, we have the wonderful interpreters.
Perfecto, lo voy a hacer en español ya que me identifico un poquito más con nuestra comunidad. Mi nombre es Cristina, muy buenas tardes. Soy la coordinadora de Californians for Pesticide Reform, por una reforma de pesticidas. Y pues nada, bueno, ya sabíamos lo que se nos venía, ¿verdad? Desde que supimos quién iba a ser el presidente, ya teníamos una experiencia anteriormente. Y por lo tanto, nosotros, aunque yo me dirijo más con los temas de pesticida, que es en lo que se enfoca CPR, sin embargo, nos dieron ahora sí que la disponibilidad y nos dieron perdí la palabra, a cada uno de los que trabajamos para CPR la opción de ser parte de Rapid Response. Todo lo hicimos porque creemos que éramos más ahora tenemos que ser una herramienta más para nuestra comunidad, para la que misma que hacemos advocacia. Fue algo lento, para serles franca, les voy a ser muy sincera, ¿verdad? Porque creo que quisiéramos hacer más. Entonces, nosotros iniciamos el mes de enero con la coalición 1 de mayo, teniendo nuestras sesiones Conoce tus derechos. Iniciamos en la iglesia de aquí de Fresno, que es donde vivo, su casa, en la iglesia San Antonio María Claret, y hubo un promedio de 120 personas que atendieron. Después empezamos a ver más la movilización del Rapid Response, de que si las organizaciones o individuos que querían ser parte estratégicamente, había un grupo que solamente era para contestar las llamadas, otro grupo el que iba a estar yendo a los lugares, y otro el backup, ¿verdad? Otro, no sé, quién iba a grabar. A veces intentaron mandar de 2 personas. Lo que sucedió era de que eran demasiadas las llamadas, era demasiado el temor, eran demasiados las preguntas, que si en verdad estaba inmigración, ya que las redes sociales fue un factor de doble filo, debido a que las redes sociales, la gente usaba fotos para intimidar a otras personas, como no vayan a la Vallarta porque está inmigración. Y a veces a mí me tocó estar en una tienda y digo, ¿de qué están hablando? Aquí no hay nada. Entonces hacer la llamada y a mí no me tocó físicamente ir a ningún lugar, porque no supe cuál era la táctica que en sí, horas de la persona de la base, cómo es que estaba funcionando. Sí decían que habíamos muchos voluntarios en Fresno, pero que ocupaban otros voluntarios y más personas activas, lo que eran Tulare y Bakersfield. Yo vivo retirada de esas áreas, así que yo no había forma de que yo pudiera cubrir estos lugares. Pero aquí en Fresno sí hubieron bastantes deportaciones. Una compañera que está en otra organización que también se incluyó para recibir llamadas. A ella la comunidad incluso le llamaba porque la gente decía, bueno, el Rapid Response no está contestando. El número de llamadas, el flujo de llamadas era extremadamente alto. Y no sé, nunca nos mandaban, pero la comunidad sí decía, estamos llamando al número que nos están indicando y nadie está contestando. Entonces, yo como en el trabajo que hago de contactar a la comunidad, los que tienen mi número de teléfono me llamaban y me decían, oye, dicen que inmigración están en los apartamentos, entonces uno por uno trataba de llamar y conectar a Rapid Response, pero pues no pasaba más de ahí, no pasaba más de ahí. Desafortunadamente, durante este tiempo de enero al momento, les puedo compartir de que hubieron varios casos. Uno que estuvo más fuerte fue 2 personas indocumentadas que trabajaron en la Home Depot, fueron a trabajar, a pedir trabajo como todos los jornaleros, ¿verdad? Se pusieron, llegó una camioneta, les dijo que sí los iban a dar trabajo, los subieron al carro y los llevaron para Santa Clarita. En Santa Clarita hicieron una parada para que estos hombres llamaran a la familia y pidieran, les estaban extorsionando, les estaban pidiendo creo que una cantidad muy fuerte de dinero. No pagaron, entonces los terminaron llevando y cruzando, ellos mismos los cruzaron a México. Como casos como estos, es lo que se ha visto mucho en el Valle. También estuvo un grupo de personas haciéndose pasar por inmigración con chalecos, se decían ICE, intimidando a nuestra comunidad. Aquí al norte de Fresno, cerca del River Park, llegó la policía, no hizo nada la policía, no nos dieron información, ya que dijimos, pues queremos saber quiénes eran aquellos que estaban temorizando al pueblo. No dieron información, entonces así lo dejaron por la paz. Sé que como estos casos hay muchísimos otros más. Yo como ciudadana tengo esposo que no tiene estatus, mamá que no tiene estatus, tengo que ser la persona que los protege, al igual que otras personas que no tienen familiares. Nos han estado llamando, me han llamado de detenciones de inmigración, para pedirme que si les puedo llevar cartera un cargador de teléfono, si les puedo llevar algo muy básico, debido a que saben que esa misma noche los van a deportar. Entonces he sido esa fuente y he ido mucho a la detención que está allá para Bakersfield. eh, y he tratado de ayudar en lo que se puede, ¿verdad? Debido a que muchos de nuestros compañeros, algunos son DACA y no se quieren ver afectados. Y desafortunadamente, ahorita como están las cosas, que también igual, o sea, sabemos que nosotros como coalición de 1 de mayo tenemos nuestra marcha que se va a llevar el jueves 1 de mayo. Muchas organizaciones tememos por nuestras posiciones porque no nos queremos exponer, pero queremos apoyar. Estamos como que sí vamos a ir, pero no vamos a marchar, sí vamos a apoyar, pero no queremos que nos expongan. Entonces, es muy contradictorio en la cuestión de que pues sabemos que existe el rapid response, pero sabemos de antemano, yo en lo personal, que no es tan rapid como quisiéramos, ¿verdad? Somos muchos las comunidades, somos muchos los hispanos que existimos en este país y desafortunadamente yo pienso que tenemos que hacer más alcance o buscar otra estrategia, porque aquí lo que es en el Valle de San Joaquín se nos está saliendo de control.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Cristina. Y creo que algo ahí que comentas que me parece muy importante. Una táctica que se está manejando en el condado de San Diego, no tanto como una red de respuesta rápida, pero viene siendo que los vecinos entre ellos se están organizando y tienen la habilidad de darse a conocer, pasar información cuando detectan un operativo de migración, ¿no? Cuando detectan que hay patrulla fronteriza o que hay elementos del ICE. Entonces, entre ellos mismos, a través de WhatsApp o Signal, se están comunicando y eso ha sido tal vez un poco más efectivo para dar información sobre una redada que se está dando a cabo. Bueno, quiero tomar un punto que comentaste, que viene siendo cómo uno, que especialmente quienes trabajan en organizaciones ONGs, que se están exponiendo a veces. Y dado a eso, sabemos que el gobierno está enfocándose en algunas organizaciones o instituciones para amenazarles a quitarles el estatus del 501(c)(3), que es el estatus de una organización sin fines de lucro. Y hay algunas que ya han perdido sus fondos federales, quienes apoyan a personas migrantes. Incluso han cancelado programas que ayudan a los menores no acompañados, que también son víctimas de este enojo, de esta violencia de Estado por parte de la administración. Y pues, Camilo, te quiero preguntar, como alternativa, sabemos que aquí estamos escuchando que hay grupos que forman parte de grupos de base, grupos de que no son formalmente ONGs. ¿Cómo sirven estas organizaciones para presentar una alternativa a la manera en que la comunidad se puede organizar? Y claro que puedes contestar en inglés o en español, como gustes.
Gracias, gracias. Mira, yo creo que es más importante que nunca cuando pensamos en los aprendizajes, ¿no? Desde nuestra historia, lo que decíamos antes, creo que tenemos que pensar cómo vamos a enfrentar estos desafíos, ¿no? Lo que nos están echando encima. Y creo que uno de los aprendizajes, algo que estamos viendo más y más, es que tenemos que ser tan radicales en nuestra respuesta como las políticas que nos están imponiendo. Y que tenemos que ser muy, muy radicales en términos de las alternativas que estamos construyendo también. Creo que estamos viendo surgir alternativas diversas, ¿no? Y que rompen con muchos esquemas. Por ejemplo, todo lo que tiene que ver con las experiencias del movimiento de santuario, por ejemplo, son alternativas que surgen desde nuestras comunidades que no necesariamente tienen que ver con formas institucionales ya establecidas o que tienen que ver con redes informales, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que tenemos siempre que pensar en cómo potenciar eso. Creo que eso es muy, muy importante. Quería señalar también, quizá ahora voy a cambiar al inglés rápidamente. I think we have to think a lot more about the lessons of our history. And this is something that we've been talking a lot about in Witness at the Border and other networks. I was talking about the need to be radical in our response, as radical in our response as the politics and the policies that are being imposed on us. And so what we've learned from networks like Suru for Solidarity is the importance of analogies like Japanese imprisonment in the 1940s, and the way in which we joined together with groups of Japanese origin against mass detention of migrant youth at places like Tornillo in Texas and Homestead in Florida during the first Trump administration, and then currently as new mass detention facilities are being geared up. And the same thing is reflected in the campaign that you can see here, this Blue Triangle campaign that we're launching, that we're hoping all of you can join us in, which takes up the symbolism of the 1930s and the 1940s in Nazi Germany, when it was migrants who were specifically targeted and stigmatized during the Nazi tyranny in Germany, just like there was a specific symbol, the yellow star for people who were identified as Jewish, or the pink star for people who were identified as LGBT, there was a blue triangle for people who fled, for example, from the Spanish Republic and who were persecuted on that basis, people who were stigmatized as migrants. And so we're trying to just pick up that experience of solidarity, and that comes from informal networks of solidarity and experiences of historical memory that we're trying to mobilize. So we just wanted to bring sort of that reflection and that experience to the table as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Camilo. Very, very important. Very important to connect our histories and definitely taking the lessons of our history, not taking those lessons for granted, I think is important. I want to bring it back to Fernanda. And Fernanda, as I understand it, Unión del Barrio has held educational sessions for how to operate community patrols as a method for community defense throughout the country. And so I want to hear from you, and if you can share for us how this self-defense method is a good alternative for maybe some of the challenges that we were hearing Cristina mention earlier about how the rapid response network system might be slower to respond than one would expect. And so anything you can share regarding your experience about that would be useful and helpful for us.
Yes, I think it's important to understand that the amount of money that goes into into ICE and ERO, HSI is ridiculous, right? So it could become powerless. So we kind of think about it in terms of like money and funding and resources. But what keeps me grounded is understanding the importance of people's power, right? I think that in terms of like whether it's rapid response or the community patrols, which takes on a more proactive role, it's what a comrade described like as a whack-a-mole, right? Like we could respond here and then they show up over here, and I'm on multiple threads around the county, and sí, están en un lado y luego el otro, and their capacity is just immense. But definitely the importance of joining the organized struggle, right? I think Rufina mentioned it, right? Like if you're not part of a political organization, if you're not part of an organized process, like this is the time, right? So the importance of building community, the importance of building a response network is going to be key in terms of fighting back and defending our communities. The trainings that we done, I kind of shared a little bit earlier, right? That we do know your rights trainings, right? But I think we're at a point where it's not enough to know your rights. We're at the stage where we need to defend and be able to respond, right? Because the way that they are abusing their power, just knowing your rights it's not enough, right? part of the Know Your Rights trainings that we do, carries a lot of, or we share a lot of the culture and the history of who we are as indigenous to these lands. Our Know Your Rights trainings include the rejection of like manifest destiny, for example, right? These are very ideological ideas that are deeply rooted in white supremacy, right? And whether you were born here or in Mexico and Centro Suramérica, like we come here and we believe those lies, right? So that's why we have people within our own community que dicen, oh, pues es que soy ilegal, o no tengo papeles, or that's what I get for coming without papers, right? So we have to really empower our community to reject those colonial laws, to reject this concept of legality, and really focus on rehumanizing our community. Reteaching them to reclaim their humanity, right? Whether con papeles o sin papeles, right? I think that's something that is this concept of criminality is such a big part of our community's mindset, that in our Know Your Rights, yeah, we give them like the law and you know, give them advice in terms of like what your rights are, but is really deconstructing those racist ideologies, which is it's ideological, but it's fundamental, right? To change that narrative and to really empower a community to reject those laws and to really ground themselves in our ancestral like claims to these lands, right? So yeah, definitely being able to have a space that radicalizes us, right? Camilo spoke to that, right? Like just we have to be able to, and we say radical because it has to be completely different, right? Because it's not radical to say we deserve humanity, we deserve dignity, we deserve happiness. That's not a radical idea, right? But we need to present these, el otro mundo es posible, right? But we have to be able to be at the forefront to demonstrate what it looks like, because our communities are being under continuous attack, right? They don't have time to visualize another world, right? We're busy, we're working, and we go home and we have to take care of the home, right? So it's really about creating this alternative space where we're human and we have a dignified life, and we could go to work and not have to worry about not coming home or coming home to an empty house, right? Like these are things that we have to reimagine for our community. So definitely building that political space that's radical, that creates an alternative power for our communities. The way that the community patrols work and just this concept of self-defense is community-based, right? It doesn't depend on the state. It doesn't depend on nonprofits. We're really building people power, right? Independent from any grant, from any funding, any NGO funding, right? It doesn't mislead our people to believe in this two-party system, right? We want to make sure that that we fully understand that, because the either party is gonna keep us in our own oppression, right? So I think the concept of self-defense, the concept of organized struggle really gives power to the people. It builds that self-determination, right? Like that we're not going to be depending on somebody else to determine our life, that we are owners of our destiny, and really giving our community the power to do it on their own, right? Even as we did community trainings all over the county, all over the states, it's really like like I can't save you, right? And as I'm moving to different cities and presenting, there is sometimes like this expectation, or even like our phones blow up. And I think like Cristina was referencing, right? Where like the calls are like overwhelming, and you hear the desperation, the powerlessness in their voices. And it's like, I'm on the other side of the county, like I can't help you, right? But what we could do is we could train you, we could support you, we could give you the tools to respond, to reject their presence, right? So I think it's really about empowering every single one of our community members. In the patrols, we say like every city, every block, every neighborhood, right? Like with this collective effort is really the only way we could fight back, because the state is coming and they're coming at us hard. So it's really the key component would be to join an organization, join organized struggle, be part of a network, you know, be part of a community. I think this country has isolated us, right? This country is very individualistic, is very selfish, right? But our communities thrive off of networks. They thrive off of building and power and the dependence on one another, right? So I think that's key, making sure that we are connected, that we're looking out for one another, that we're protecting and defending one another would be the alternative to what the state is currently giving us.
Thank you, Fernanda. I'm going to switch to Spanish to ask Rufina a question. Rufina, voy a hacerle ahora la pregunta a usted en base a lo que comentó hace rato, a base a lo que también comentó Fernanda sobre la necesidad de participar, de ser parte de la militancia de una organización. ¿Por qué ha sido importante a usted ser parte de la Resistencia, que es una organización que sabemos que lucha por las personas detenidas que están a riesgo de la deportación? ¿Cómo le ha ayudado a usted y a otros, a sus seres queridos que han sido detenidos?
Sí, claro. Mira, desafortunadamente cuando tú llegas a este país, te metes a ese globito, ¿verdad? Te enfocas solamente en trabajar, en tratar de sobrevivir en este país, tratando de agarrar las supuestas oportunidades que este país te da, ¿no? Y no te das cuenta de la discriminación que hay a tu alrededor, hasta que viene alguien y te pincha ese globito donde te ves afectado, ¿verdad? En mi caso, uno de mis familiares fue detenido. Es ahí donde yo me involucro con la resistencia. ¿Y por qué? Porque aprendí a mirar la forma de discriminación, cómo el gobierno, cómo el sistema te discrimina, y tan solo por no hablar el idioma, tan solo por tu físico, es, descubres que, o sea, no estás en un país donde realmente, como decimos, lleno de oportunidades, sino que también es un país que ahora te está usando para ellos ganar dinero, ¿verdad? ¿Cómo te monetiza a través de las detenciones, a través de mantenerte dentro de un lugar donde no sabes cuándo vas a salir, no sabes cuándo vas a salir o estar con tu familia aquí dentro del país o salir deportado? Entonces, la Resistencia es una organización que lucha por todo eso. Es una organización que creemos en las segundas oportunidades, que creemos en que todos merecemos una vida digna, si venimos a este país es huyendo muchas veces de mucha, de cierta forma, la miseria, ¿verdad? En nuestros países, de nuestros propios gobiernos, y llegamos a un lugar donde te va peor, ¿no? Entonces, esta organización me ha enseñado y me ha dejado mucho aprendizaje, y es cada día es seguir aprendiendo el cómo transformar ese miedo que el sistema y los gobiernos te inculcan y te hacen sentir, ese coraje que al ver a tu ser querido detenido, me enseñó la Resistencia, cómo transformar todo eso en lucha, ¿verdad? En lucha para no tan solo te vuelva a pasar a ti como persona, sino también a los demás personas, a tu demás comunidad, que creemos que estamos a salvo en estos lugares, que estamos en un lugar que nos va a proteger, cuando no es cierto. Aprendes a mirar a ese sistema tan corrupto, que solamente te está usando de cierta forma, ¿no? Entonces, creo que por eso es muy importante, como decía la compañera, que nos unamos a las organizaciones que tenemos en nuestras comunidades, y que aprendamos a saber defendernos, a conocer nuestros derechos, y a que aprendamos a decir yo valgo, yo tengo mis valores y que nadie va a venir a imponerme a ciertas cosas, ¿no? Que me van a mantener de cierta forma callado y que no tengo ningún derecho. Creo que sí podemos tener el derecho de alzar la voz y más en estos momentos, ¿no? Que son de gran, en cierta forma tan terribles, que están oprimiéndonos y que están oprimiendo especialmente a las personas que ya están siendo afectadas y que están dentro de un centro de detención y que pudieron tal vez, ¿verdad?, luchar por sí antes de caer en ese lugar. Entonces, pues es importante que sepamos que nadie nos va a venir a salvar, que en la resistencia siempre decimos que no estamos solos, que hay alguien que nos está echando la mano y que si queremos que nadie nos va a venir a salvar, ¿no? Que el pueblo solamente salva al pueblo. Entonces es hora de levantarnos y que luchemos no tan solo por nosotros, sino por nuestras familias, pero también por las personas que ya están en esos lugares tan terribles como los centros de detenciones y que estamos siendo criminalizados y que no lo somos, sino el sistema nos hace creer eso, pero no es cierto. Entonces, es hora de luchar y de unirnos y de combatir a este monstruo tan grande, ¿verdad?, que tenemos al frente de nosotros.
Muchas gracias, Rufina, compañera Rufina. Como usted bien lo comentó, todos merecemos una vida digna. Y eso me lleva me recuerda la primera conferencia de prensa que tuvo la Casa Blanca, donde a la vocera le preguntaron, bueno, ¿quiénes son los criminales? Y la respuesta de ella fue, todos. Todos somos los criminales. Y creo que lo importante de eso es recordarnos o que tomar este aprendizaje de cuando a veces nosotros también caemos en las trampas de fichar a nuestra propia comunidad. Cuando decimos nos tratan como criminales, como que si a otro ser humano se le debe de permitir deshumanizar, y especialmente cuando estamos viviendo un clima tan antimigrante que a todos nos ven como delincuentes. Entonces sus palabras son bastante fuertes en buscar esa dignidad que tanto merecemos. Cristina, ya va a ser la última pregunta antes de entrar a la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Tomando ese punto, lo que nos comentaste hace rato de que en tu propia familia, pues es una familia mezclada, ¿no? Mixta, como decía, mezclada, donde tienes a seres queridos que tienen documentación, tú tienes el privilegio de tener la ciudadanía. ¿Qué significa para ti entonces estar involucrada en una fuerza organizativa, sea de respuesta rápida, de la organización en la cual trabajas, de seguir luchando por el bienestar y la protección de tus familiares, de tus vecinos, de tus seres queridos, que posiblemente sean fichados como criminales simplemente por ser seres humanos?
It's a hard question, and I'll go ahead and change it to English. It's a hard question just because I've grown up knowing and having the Mexican culture, and I didn't learn English until I was like in 3rd grade, even though I was born here. And like you said, I was privileged, and I thank my mother for that because she was pregnant of me when she jumped the border. And even having the citizenship, and I've shared it with other medias, I wish I had the power to share a piece of my birth certificate to others and be able to give status. I myself live in fear because, I mean, no, I'm brown. I have an accent. I speak Spanish. I love speaking Spanish more than English. I love my two cultures, but at the same time, I have a lot of like, I'm afraid as anyone else. I'm afraid because if immigration were to come to my house and attack my husband, in this case, he would not only look at my husband, he would target the whole entire family. We would all be traumatized. If immigration were to seek my mom walking or working or doing something, we would also be traumatized because I'm the daughter, and I don't want anything to happen to my mom. My friends are DACA recipients, and many of them have a wonderful job and they do really good and support their homes. And in fact, I live in fear for them. So I have to sit down and dinner and explain to my daughters, just because our last name is their last name is Flores, mine is Gutierrez, how to explain to them what's happening and why they should try to protect others more vulnerable. My daughter, and it sucks because my daughter was under the impression, because we go to rallies, we go to the Mexican consulate, we do protests, we want to make sure that our voices are being heard, and I've taken them since they were little. And it's funny how my daughter, and this just happened to be that one in one conversation, she was telling me, she was asking me, what do I do if immigration does come? What do I do if I just go to school and they take me? And I was like, wait, I've been talking and advocating, but I haven't really talked to my daughter. She's in 4th grade. And then my other ones are listening there, and she's in 2nd grade, and my other one's 5, and she's like, well, we're gonna get deported like everyone else. And I'm there thinking, no, like, as much as I want to advocate, something was slipping there. And I know kids are having questions, and I know I have questions, what's going to happen? And yeah, I mean, all we do is kind of stand up with others, and unity is something that we need to do. Engage with other organizations. We work along with a lot of unions. We work a lot with other topics that don't have to do nothing with what my position, just because we know we have to empower everyone, and that we are seeking to survive this 4 years. And yeah, sorry, I kind of get emotional just because I know that I'm using examples of many others. And I myself carry a red card with me, and it's a symbol because I myself feel like a Mexican. I have the opportunity and the privilege to have a social security, but then at the same time, if my family and my friends are in fear, I stand with them. And of course, I'm in the front line, and I did share my information there, my email and my personal phone number, just because I know that others are in need, and I will do as much as I can to protect anyone, anywhere I can.
Thank you, Cristina. And you know, the emotions are validated. This is an emotional topic for all of us, and it goes back generations, as when Camilo first introduced the topic earlier. My grandparents who were born in Los Angeles in the 1930s were deported, right? And so that history of, you know, we carry this message of we didn't cross the border crossed us. You know, we hear that chant in our communities, and in fact, generationally, we've lived it. So I want to thank all the panelists. We're going now into Q&A, but before we continue, I just want to thank all of you and just reference the fact that it is an emotional subject. We live it, we breathe it, and we're experiencing the hardships of collective trauma, which is why we have to respond collectively in order to seek that collective healing. So I want to then now go into a Q&A and see if there are any questions that any attendees have offered. I know there's a Q&A button down at the bottom, but I believe some people might have been posting some questions on the webinar chat as well. And our colleague Joe is going to be monitoring some of those questions as we move forward. So feel free to place any questions in either the Q&A chat or in the webinar chat.
Okay. No questions.
Or if people want to ask the question vocally, they can just put their name in chat, and I will keep stack of names in the chat, and you can ask your question vocally as well if typing it out is a bit of a pain. So put your name in the chat, and I will also I'll call those names out in the order that they appear in chat.
I don't have a question. I have a little comment.
Adelante, Laura. Go ahead.
Yes, Laura.
You know, I've been sitting here and for an hour and listening to everyone, especially the panelists, what they're saying, and this collective pain. It's funny to hear Pedro saying that his parents, what happened to his parents or grandparents. My parents were my mom was deported in the 1930s, you know, and well, she came back because she needed to work, and here I am. But La Migra has been with us for so many years, scaring the hell out of us and the community. And I don't mean just us individually, that the ICE has been, you know, it's like the state over us, over the community, watching us. And when it's good for the powers that be, and when it's not beneficial for the powers that be, then they release that pressure. But we have been living like that for centuries, you know, and it's really heartening to see that we're fighting back in whichever way we can, and that we're resistant, and that we're in the little way we can, whether it's not little. To know your right, it's a big deal. You know that in Chicago, Homer, the border czar, complained that the people in Chicago were too educated and they were not opening the doors. So it was really frustrating their campaign to deport or to detain people. And it's just a little thing, you know, of knowing your rights. And I believe that someone was saying is we gotta go beyond that to knowing your rights, to the question of human rights, and that no human being is illegal. And I think we need to reassure that in our work. So I'll stop there because I'll stop there. But I mean, it has been very inspiring and kind of emotional to hear the panelists. Because I also live in fear, not for me, but for my family members. So.
Thank you, Laura. We have some questions in the question and answer that we can attend to now. From Gloria. I'm not sure who this is directed towards, but the question reads, please summarize what occurred in Bakersfield before inauguration. So I'm not sure who that was directed towards.
That would be Christina, I believe.
When they mean inauguration, what would that?
I can share about it too in case. Essentially what happened was that the Border Patrol out of the El Centro sector decided that they were going to conduct indiscriminate raids at places where they knew that farm workers and day laborers would congregate in the mornings before they went to work. They told the media that they had a list of people that they were targeting. And in fact, over 200 people were questioned and somewhere around 70 to 80 people were detained. There were some cases where Border Patrol were extremely violent with how they detained people. One case was a US citizen who they took his license, he provided it to them, but they slashed his tires in order to prevent him from leaving. And he was like, you have my license, why would I leave? To make a long story short, the ACLU and a couple of other organizations have now filed a lawsuit regarding the treatment that Border Patrol demonstrated when they were conducting these indiscriminate raids. They also lied to the media about how they conducted the raids and where they were stationed. They said that they did not go to any agricultural fields, and there were witnesses that said that in fact they were, and some people were picked up at the agricultural fields. And so they forced people to sign voluntary departure. In some cases, they didn't even have them signed, but they removed them from the United States, most of whom were Mexican nationals. Now, as a consequence of the lawsuit, they are being forced to be retrained on the Constitution and how to conduct these operations. But before they finished, they also threatened that they were going to continue the operations further north, so into Fresno, into Sacramento, into the Bay Area. And so this was a very, it wasn't a veiled threat at all. It was, we're going to do this. We know that today there was Border Patrol operations in Pomona. We don't know yet from what sector they were, if they were from San Diego or Centro, but these are also what appear to be indiscriminate raids. Somewhere of about 24 people were picked up today, including a minor. So these indiscriminate raids are continuing, and that's why what the resistance looks like, the Know Your Rights presentations, the rapid response networks and teams, the community patrols, the witnessing and being present for people that are detained. These are all ways to respond and to uplift the human dignity that we all merit. And so that's just a very brief summary of what occurred in Bakersfield.
Thanks, Pedro. Chris, I see your question in the chat, but the Q&A that is in the Zoom Q&A link are before yours. So we'll try to get to yours, but we'll go through what's here in the Zoom question and answer. But I just wanted to acknowledge your question there, Chris. The question from Kirk is, how can we start some community patrols like described here? What is the first step? Fernanda, I presume that's for you.
Yes, the first step would be getting a group of people that are interested in doing it. Let me give you, let me, and I'll just put it in the chat. Oh, wrong one. There is a pre-recorded workshop on community patrols. This was back in maybe January or February. It kind of goes over obviously like know your rights. What are the characteristics of the ICE vehicles? This is based on the characteristics in San Diego, but we know that it works similar across the states. So we could start there. That's something that you could watch on your own time. Get a group of people that are interested in doing it. I'm not sure where the person who asked is located, but you are welcome to contact us. We've done trainings via Zoom if it's out of the San Diego region or LA region. But yeah, definitely it's just getting a group together. Depending on the size of the city. If you start with a group of 6 people, that allows you to do 2 or 3 different units, 3 different cars essentially to do a patrol. But yeah, it's just more about the willingness to participate, the desire, the commitment to get people together. The patrols themselves are exhausting. We're coming out 2, 3 times depending on our capacity a week to patrol. And it's additional task on your already full-time work, but we know that that's what it requires, right? The sacrifice, the commitment. But yeah, definitely there's a link. I'll give you my email, my direct email. If that's something that you're interested in doing, just reach out to me and we could start coordinating trainings and get you ready. And this is for anybody. I mean, as you could see, like that's why I shared the video at the beginning, because that person wasn't trained. And the science is easy, right? And I think we have to get used to this concept of self-defense, of denouncing their presence, of rejecting their presence, kicking them out, making sure that they know that they're not welcome. I know just based on these last 3 months, a lot of our community members are getting comfortable with recording and documenting their presence. But I think the success out of the patrols is really coming in a safe distance from them, where they know that they're being recorded, that they know that we know that they're in our neighborhoods. That way the secrecy is no longer their weapon, is no longer their power. So yeah, Unión del Barrio will always support any city, any person that wants to organize and do the similar work in their neighborhoods.
Thanks. Pedro, I think, are we at time here?
Yeah, yeah, we're pretty much at time, and I know Laura wants to do some closing comments. So, and I know there are a bunch of questions on there. I try to answer a couple in the Q&A, and we can probably, go on for at least another hour with Q&A, but respecting the time that the panelists have offered, and as well as the interpreters and all of you, want to express on my behalf my appreciation for you joining the panel and for listening in, and I'll pass it on to Laura so she can close us out.
I don't have like conclusion remarks. What you're doing, it's very important. It seems like it's not, but like the rapid responses, the know your rights, know your human rights, and reaching out to people is very important, especially to organize stress in the webinar. And I think it's very important. We're not alone. We have neighbors, we have people that really want to do something, and they're reaching out because we see with what's happening, with the deportations are happening, and we see it that it's targeted, it seems, to the community, to the undocumented community or the immigrant community, but it's not going to stop there. I mean, Trump has already said that, when he was meeting with the El Salvador president, saying, we're going to need more prisons because we have people that homegrown, he said, which means citizens, and that we can send there. We can send them there and so forth. So the attack on the undocumented in the immigrant community, it's not going to stop there. With this government and the way they're going about it, it's gonna continue, not only to the ones that are documented, but also to people that are not undocumented. We saw the Columbia student, Khalid, that he's a legal resident, but he spoke up against what was happening in Gaza. So our First Amendment has been violated. And, we have the Constitution. It might not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal. We have to fight for what we have. We cannot let them take us back to the 1930s or the 1950s. And this is on every level, whether it be on workers' rights, whether it be on women's rights, or whether it be on immigrant rights. We have fought very hard through the past years for what we have now, for the respect of rights, or at least what it seems that respect of rights needs to be upheld. And it's very important that we continue this work. And you, the people that have been in the panelists, I mean, I commend you for what you've done and what you have continued to do. And I hope it inspires others that are in the webinar to do the same. We have the publications, People's Tribune and Tribuna del Pueblo. We will publish any story that you send us. We want to continue with these webinars. And so we have set up a survey so that we can continue. There's a lot of more cities and towns that are fighting, that are part of the resistance. And we will work with all of us to bring their voices to us and to tell us. This is not just so, it's educational, but it's also inspiring. One of the things that we have to do is that we do have rights. We are human beings. and they need to respect that. And we're pushing back at what the administration is doing, and we have to continue back. And I, like Fernanda and others have said, organize, 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 and you know, we can do whatever we can do. I mean, some can do the rapid response, some can do the, you know, writing an article, or the, you know, the community patrols. Everything is key and everything is important. So we're, you know, those that have organized the webinar today, like Witness at the Border with Camilo, with Pedro from American Friends, what is it? American Friends Service Committee, and other organizations and individuals, professors, students. We have about 3 students that help us set up these webinars, and like Nancy Muro, Francisco Mendoza, and also Joseph Moreno, and professors that can help us. But we also have community members that, like you guys, that we can continue, and we should continue. This is a very important time of our lives where we need to stand up for what we believe and for what is right. So I will end there, and you know, reach out to us. And like I said, the 9-10 coalition is willing to continue as long as it's needed. So thank you.